Welcome to Chapter 15, Peers and the Sociocultural World. In this chapter, we're going to explore peer relations through early childhood and adolescence. Peers are individuals that are about the same age or maturity level as you are. One of the most important functions of the peer group is to provide a source of information and comparison about the world outside of the family. Peer influence can be either positive or negative. Peer relations in childhood and adolescence. To start there, parents influence their children's peer relationships. Basic lifestyle decisions of the parents largely determine the pool from which children can select possible friends. They usually choose their friends from their neighborhood that they live in, their church, their school, or even their own friends. And parent-child relationships influence the children's peer relationships. Peer interaction can be influenced by context, including the type of peer the individual interacts with and the situation and the location where the peer actually interacts. Interactions in these various contexts convey different messages and opportunities. These messages and opportunities can influence adaptive or maladaptive behavior. There are some factors that do affect peer relations, and some of those factors are personality traits, emotionality, which is how open the individual is to the peer, status and power of the individual, and status and power of the other peer or the peer group. For peer relations in childhood and adolescence, there's several important things to keep in mind. One is that in early childhood, children distinguish between friends and non-friends. So preschool children are more likely to have friends of different gender and different ethnicity. Once they get into elementary school, things begin to change a little. So reciprocity becomes important in peer exchanges. So until about they're 12 years old, they prefer the same sex groups. But then once they move beyond that, things really change. Preschool children, like I said, are more likely to spend time with same-sex playmates. The amount of time spent in peer interactions actually rises in middle and late childhood as well as early adolescence. The size of your peer group increases, and you're also given a little bit more freedom, so you're less supervised by the adults. Adolescent peer groups are more likely to include both boys and girls. Standards of peer groups and influence of the crowds and cliques become increasingly important. Social knowledge involved in the ability to get along with peers. So, what goals to pursue in poorly defined or ambiguous situations? How do you initiate and maintain a social bond? What script should you follow to get other children to be your friend? Emotions definitely play a strong role in determining whether peer relations are successful. There are all different types of peer statuses, believe it or not. Sociometric status is a term that describes the extent to which children are liked or disliked by their peer group. So there are actually 5 distinct peer statuses. One is popular children, and they're the ones that are often nominated as a best friend, and are rarely disliked by their peers. Then you have the average children. They receive an average number of both positive and negative nominations from their peers. Neglected children are infrequently nominated as a best friend, but they're not disliked by their peers. They're just kind of overlooked. The rejected children are infrequently nominated as a best friend and are actively disliked by their peers. About 10 to 20% of these rejected children are shy, and the majority being aggressive. And then the fifth one is the controversial children. They are often nominated as both the best friend and as being disliked. So popular children, they seem to have social skills that help contribute to them being well-liked. So they listen, they maintain open lines of communication, they're happy, they're self-confident without being conceited. Those are the popular kids. Adolescent peer groups are more likely, as I said earlier, to include boys and girls together. The standards of peer groups and influence of crowds and cliques becomes increasingly important. It seems like when you're an adolescent, you seem to form that clique where you don't let outsiders in. And young adolescents conform more to peer standards than children do. So basically, when you become an adolescent, you're more concerned with fitting in and having that approval of your peer. So I mentioned the word cliques. Cliques are usually small groups ranging from 2 to 12 individuals. The members are usually of the same sex and about the same age. They share ideas, they hang out together, and then together they bond and they form that in-group identity. Crowds, on the other hand, are larger than cliques and they're less personal. The members are grouped together based on pretty much reputation, and they may not spend that much time together. And crowds are also defined by the activities that they engage in. Friendships. There are so many different functions of friendships. And it's funny because we don't really think about friendships having a function. So their main functions are companionship, stimulation, ego support, social comparison, and affection and intimacy. Intimacy in friendships is characterized by the self-disclosure and sharing of private thoughts. And most of the time that doesn't appear until early adolescence. Positive friendships are associated with positive outcomes. So if you have positive friendships, chances are there will be a lower rate of delinquency, there will be a lower rate of substance abuse, there will be less bullying and victimization. And with the positive friendships, there'll be higher levels of academic achievement and exercise. Peer rejection, having friends who are depressed, not having close relationships with a best friend, less contact with friends definitely increases depression in the adolescent. So that's why you want to make sure that the adolescents are surrounded by positive influences. Friendship through the years. So how many of you actually have friends that you've had since kindergarten or elementary school? It's probably a few of you, but friendships are characterized by similarity. So as long as there is something that you have in common, your friendship will remain as strong as it was. Teenagers prefer a small number of friendships that are more intense and more intimate. The number of friendships declines from adolescence to emerging adulthood, and that's pretty much because your interests change as you get older. Friendship networks expand in early adulthood, so you'll lose your childhood friends, but you will pick up early adulthood friends, people that you find you have things in common with. People choose close friends over new friends as they grow older. So sometimes, people think that it's important to have a ton of friends, but it's actually better to have a few close friends than to have a bunch of acquaintances. The last part of this PowerPoint talks about play and leisure and how important it is. So play is definitely an important part of child development. It helps the child master anxiety and reduce conflict. It helps them cope with life's problems. It's pretty much a strategy on how to help them release energy, release pent-up tension, to really be able to work out and use that exercise with a purpose. Play is the child's work. As an adult, you go to work, you do those things. You make money, you work hard, you don't have time to play. As a child, it's your job to play. Because when you do, you actually reap the benefits. So play is a child's work. There's sensory motor play, there's practice play, social play, constructive play, free play time, structured games. There's a lot of things that we do, and I know that you've heard me say this in class, that children should play with a purpose. And so these following slides go into detail as to what some of these types of play are. And then, as I said, there are definite benefits of play, and they're cognitive benefits. It adds to your creativity, your abstract thinking, your imagination. Play also helps you develop a better attention span, concentration, helps you solve problems, gives you that perspective of having empathy. It allows you to master new concepts, and it definitely improves your language. There's also socio-emotional benefits of play. It's enjoying, it's relaxing, it's a self-expression, it's an anxiety reducer, it helps you build self-confidence, and really, it's you learning how to cooperate and share. Play therapy is something that we use to allow children to work off the frustrations and to analyze child conflicts and develop a way of coping. So Piaget and Vygotsky, that we talked about in earlier chapters, also talk about play and its importance. And here is a 7-day, because it's a weekly average of, or estimate of how we spend our time, whether it's viewing TV, talking, watching sports, doing structured activities, or just having free time. And it compares this time between the US, Europe, and Eastern Asia. And finally, the largest amounts of U.S. adolescents' free time is spent engaging in screen-based activities, hanging out, pursuing unstructured leisure activities with their friends. Midlife, it changes. And then when you're older, you really don't spend much time in leisure activities at all. And this takes us into the theories of aging, which will be your next video lecture.